Welcome back, YouTube. Today we are going to be doing our second matchup for the rematch series for the sports festival, post all for one fight. But just like the first one, we got to go over some rules. So, rule number one: no equipment. That means any support gear, anything that requires them to have it on for extra damage or anything like that. Rule number two: all feats are going to be up to the all for one final fight. I don't have any feats for post time skip, so I'm just not going to use them. Rule number three: matchups are exactly the same as the first one, the exact same fights that happened in season 2. Rule number four: protection for bystanders. I want an invisible wall that allows nothing to get through so that the contestants can go all out without having to worry about the bystanders getting hurt. Rule number five: same time, same weather as the first time. That way there's no discrepancies for rain or weather or anything like that. Same exact weather. Rule number six: I say no ring outs. With that, it's just wild because of how explosive and potent that a lot of the quirks have gotten since their first time fighting. I just feel like most of them would cheat this rule anyway, like flying or freezing the ground, etc. So we're just not going to use it. Today's contestants are going to be Shoto versus Bakugo, if you haven't already seen by the thumbnail. One of the most close matchups throughout the entire show runtime. These two have been portrayed to be even throughout the entire series. Having trained together, fought villains together, they're so aware of each other's combat style and weaknesses, along with the teachers that have trained them together. They're hearing the stuff that the other one has to work on. So they're actually a lot closer than people really give them credit for. I'm going to start off by saying that this matchup is so close that even if you don't agree with me, I wouldn't even be opposed to it. Because of how this fight could end up in either favor means that either way you could be right. It's really 50-50. But I'm going to start with Bakugo this time because in my last video, his matchup was so one-sided that I didn't even feel the need to go over his feats because he was winning regardless. If you haven't seen it, the link is popping up right about now, should be. Go check that out after this one if you haven't already. I plan on doing all of the major fights for the sports festival with the rematches, so you can expect more videos like this. So if you like this type of content, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for me if you could. But with that out of the way, let's get started. The rematch between Shoto and Bakugo will be vastly different from the first battle they had in Season 2. Both have reached peak mastery of their quirks and developed specialized techniques based on their post-power levels of the all-for-one fight. I'd say Bakugo's full body cluster speed reaches a tier where only the fastest characters such as Shigaraki or Midoriya could compete. He develops cluster, allowing him to use smaller, more precise, and faster explosions for insane mobility and damage. Overall, he's one of the fastest in his verse. It can hit like a nuke, and prioritizes close combat to boot. But he does have one glaring weakness that everyone seems to forget because he's everybody's favorite boy. He has to use sweat to use his quirk. Basically, cold environments makes it very hard for him to do a lot of the stuff you see him doing in the show, like explosions and getting speed and power. All are drastically decreased to an extent that we don't really know for sure, but it is enough to annoy him and to actually be able to see the difference in his power. And if he can't sweat at all, you pretty much render him useless. He still can propel himself and use some serious explosions with a little bit of sweat he can get off, but it requires way more setup. He also has another glaring weakness, for when he uses his attacks, the explosions also gives him recoil. If he doesn't have on his support gear, he can actually really hurt his arms when using his quirk for too long. That's not something you want to have to worry about in a matchup with no gear. Bakugo does have a very high battle IQ, he's very aggressive, but for him to use his damaging of explosions, he has to get close. Usually he uses the explosions for mobility first, get in close, and usually has to come to a stop before he can get off the big attack that he wants at close range so often. Basically, he has to choose to either attack or move. This is excluding his full body cluster technique, where he can pretty much do both of those at the exact same time, but it has the same drawbacks and effects that his original palm quirk does. He hurts himself every time he uses this cluster quirk, and he also hurts himself while using it over his entire body instead of just through his palms. Now, for Shoto, he has mastered both sides of his quirk, ice and fire, dubbing it phosphor slash cold flame. He simultaneously nullifies his previous self-imposed limitations, where he's using one side too much, where he gets some serious drawbacks. If he uses his flames for too long, he will overheat like his father. And if he uses his ice quirk, he gains frostbite. So his ultimate move, Phosphor, really works out for him. It allows him to freeze and pretty much use cold flames. It gives him immense area AoE control also, because he has no drawbacks from using too much ice or overheating from using too much fire. It really is the perfect balance for him. Not to mention, Shoto doesn't really use support gear. Yes, his outfit helped him regulate his body temperature, but that was before he unlocked Phosphor, so he doesn't really need that either. But at first glance, who do you think I win? I'd have to say it boils down to the speed and stamina advantage that Bakugo has. He has massive damage potential, great mobility, higher battle IQ than Shoto, and not to mention, he does have some pretty hard explosions that do hit like a nuke, especially with the full body cluster, which would surprise Shoto's ability to not be able to keep up. Bakugo would do this, and he has what's known as a relenting fighting style. The first thing he would do is try to get in close. Not to mention, Shoto would have to put the ice on the floor, putting Bakugo in the air, which is where he prefers to fight anyway. He's more superior and consistent in the air than Shoto would ever be. So I think, first glance, Bakugo will win this. And if that's the conclusion you came up with, no disrespect, but I think that'd be a bit ignorant of some of the big glaring weaknesses that are in the room with us. Shoto has excellent temperature control. It's literally his best move, Phosphor. He used the Great Glacial Aegir to severely negate Dobby's flames. He literally extinguished them. So if he can extinguish Dobby's flames, which are harder than Endeavor's, I don't see Bakugo being able to build up enough sweat for his explosions. Trapping Bakugo in a cold environment, he probably wouldn't hit him directly with it, but it would slow down a lot of Bakugo's movements due to the cold environment. He would be a disruptor for Bakugo's offense, speed, not to mention durability. Have you ever smashed your finger when it's cold outside? And Shoto is aware of this weakness. When Shoto, Deku, and Bakugo were under Endeavor's tutelage, Bakugo flat out tells Shoto he's having a hard time keeping up with him in Endeavor due to the weather and the buildings around them. As for combat IQ and strategy, while both are geniuses, Bakugo's battle instincts and ability to adapt in high-speed, close-quarters combat are arguably higher, allowing him to bypass Shoto's defenses. But under that pretense, that fits Bakugo full sweat and wearing his gear that assists and stores up sweat, which is where a lot of people get these feats from, which we decided won't be used here. So he's not going to have that same speed feat that most people would pull for a fight like this. Meanwhile, Shoto has no such weakness anymore. He can't slow himself down due to his ice. He in fact would be slowing Bakugo down. Bakugo did speed blitz Shigaraki and Young Awful One, but that was with his gear in warm weather environments. Shoto was actually able to reach Dobby with Ida and react to him at extremely high speeds, facilitating the idea that Ida, with his own master quirk, while it isn't obviously Shoto's speed feat, he was aware and steering them moving at that high speed using ice and fire to maintain that set speed, meaning he could perceive what's going on during their travel. The key is in the details. In this sequence, the speed and support that he gave the Ida would actually put him at supersonic speeds, which is how fast they were going to get to said location. Shoto and Ida actually traveled 400 kilometers in 10 minutes to reach Dobby and Kamino. And that's not Shoto's speed feat, but it's the fact that he could react and perceive what was going on at such a high speed. With that being said, I just don't see Bakugo speed blitzing him under this said condition, with the cold weather slowing Bakugo down without his gear. It just doesn't seem plausible for him to be able to do that. Well, some would argue that Bakugo could just speed blitz him before he could release the cold flames, but Shoto has a resistance to Bakugo's quirk due to his heat resistance. So yes, he probably will get a hit or two off, but it's not enough to one-shot Shoto. I just don't see that happening, and Shoto would be able to get those cold flames off once he's taken those one or two hits. Shoto's phosphor does require buildup, and he needs to maintain concentration. Even during his fight with Dabi, he lost it for a few seconds. Bakugo is well aware of this weakness and will likely keep pressuring him as much as he can so that he can't build it up in peace. Bakugo's Hauser Impact Cluster does need time as well, so you can count that out. I could see somehow Bakugo winning, especially with the full body cluster, which allows him to simply outspeed and overwhelm Shoto. Bakugo is noted to be relentless and capable of closing the gap, making it difficult for Shoto to maintain the necessity of distance that he needs for his ice to work. However, Shoto is also aware of the fact that Bakugo would probably want to get in his face, so he tries best to keep his distance from him to charge his phosphor. And he is capable of doing this, as you can see in their first fight from the sports festival, where Bakugo takes a little bit of a while to break that ice to get in there to him, giving Shoto plenty of time to set up phosphor. However, to me, the more likely scenario would be Shoto successfully landing his Great Glacier Agir with a prolonged keep away game of his ice all over the field, forcing Bakugo to use his quirk to dodge and block the relentless ice barrage until he literally can't keep up, or keep Bakugo in a cold state, which would shut down his quirk's production. I don't know. The match is considered very close, often deemed inconclusive or a 50-50 toss-up, but that's with the gear and the perfect environment, which we already said is not going to be happening here. So, looking at the feats and the numbers, you would say Bakugo would have better feats, but that's in a vacuum, under the conditions for Bakugo to set up his sweat and gain speed, which I don't think Shoto will allow, because he is very aware of Bakugo's weakness, just like Bakugo is aware of Shoto's weaknesses. The cold he would set up for the environment early in the fight, lowering Bakugo's speed overall, which is his only advantage to begin with. Shoto has no such weaknesses to exploit to make his moves slower or weaker like he had the first time, when Bakugo's speed was all he really had on Shoto. So with that out of the way, I can only come up with one conclusion. It's so close either way, but most people will call it a draw or significantly lean towards Bakugo because of how much more screen time he's had in the fights he's been in. But without all those advantages he had in those fights that we're not going to use here, he doesn't have gear, I don't see him pulling out this win. And as we stated in the beginning, this fight is going to be close, so I can see why you would say either way, and we can all agree that if Bakugo had this gear, we would be having a completely different conversation. But what it boils down to them using their bigger moves to counter each other at the same time, minus the gear bonuses, it's going to be phosphorus every time. Bakugo's ultimate move requires too much sweat buildup, which in that environment I just don't see him having. So, I'm giving this win to Shoto via temperature manipulation, range attacks, area of effect, quirk notification via hyperthermia. And that's it for the video. I know this video was kind of long, so I'm not going to waste any more of your time, but if you like this kind of content, please hit that like and subscribe button. I got some more of these rematches coming, so if your favorite character ain't popped up yet, it'll probably be in the next one. With that out of the way, thank you guys for watching. Wanna be anime.